In a park, she performed a life-saving act for someone she didn't know. 3 hours passed, and then 5 high-end automobiles arrived at her residence. The subsequent events rendered her utterly stunned. 20 years. That was the duration of Denise Lattimore's service to that hospital. She wasn't simply a nurse, she was the nurse. The one they consulted when situations became critical. The one who eagerly accepted the less desirable shifts. Holidays, weekends, overnight assignments. Denise was consistently present. And then, abruptly, she ceased her service. The electronic message arrived at 6:42 a.m. While she was sipping her first cup of coffee, her shift wasn't supposed to start until 7:30. There was no meeting, no call. Just a subject line that read position status update. She clicked it and read, "We regret to inform you that due to internal restructuring, your position has been terminated effective immediately. Your final paycheck will be deposited by the end of the week. We thank you for your years of service." That was it. No signature, no explanation. Denise watched the screen, anticipating additional information. A follow-up, a phone number. Anything, nothing. She blinked, shut the laptop, and remained still. Her daughter, Mecca, was still asleep upstairs. The last thing Denise desired was for her to awaken and observe her mother falling apart before 7 a.m. Denise placed the coffee mug in the sink and stood for a full minute with her hands braced on the counter. She didn't cry. Not yet. She grabbed her keys, slipped on her running shoes, and left a note on the table. Went for a walk. Be back soon. Love you. She didn't even bother to change out of her scrubs. She walked out the door and headed for Avondale Park, one of the oldest in Birmingham. It was quiet this time of morning. Just a few regulars walking their dogs, a jogger here and there. Denise wasn't sure what she was doing. She hadn't planned this walk. She hadn't planned anything. A weight settled in her chest, a feeling she needed to process. The phrases from the email echoed in her mind. "We regret to inform you." She considered it harsh, not just the dismissal, but the moment it occurred. Her daughter had recently begun her studies at Miles College. Tuition payments were approaching, and Denise had been striving to manage every dollar to cover expenses. There had been no prior notice, no meeting, no warning, simply a formal, impersonal message. She walked until her calves ached. She located a bench overlooking the small lake and sat down. Her phone vibrated. It was Mecca. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" It read. "Didn't hear you leave." Denise looked at the message. She began to type a reply. Deleted it. Typed another. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just needed air. Love you." She set the phone down and leaned back against the bench. The sky was a gentle, early blue, the kind of color that could make you momentarily forget how difficult life can be. "I gave them everything," she murmured, not realizing she had spoken aloud. To anyone else observing, she appeared like just another woman taking a morning walk. But internally, Denise was falling apart, not solely due to the job loss, but from the silence that followed. No one from the hospital contacted her. No one sent a message. 20 years, and not a single farewell. She rubbed her eyes. She wouldn't cry in a park, but something within her altered right then. Perhaps it was exhaustion. Perhaps it was grief. Perhaps it was anger disguised in a gentler form. For the first time in a long time, Denise felt still. Not okay, just still. Then she heard it. A sound. Quick, sharp, like someone hitting the pavement hard. She turned her head. A man had fallen near the trail, just beyond a row of hedges. He was maybe in his late 50s, face down on the ground, motionless. People looked, but no one moved. But Denise did. Denise didn't hesitate. Her body kicked into gear before her mind even caught up. She rose quickly, running towards the man prone on the asphalt. As she approached, the heat of the pavement was noticeable, along with the odor of sweat and a metallic tang. She wasn't sure if it was blood or fear. He remained still. "Sir?" she asked, kneeling beside him. "Can you hear me?" There was no response. Several individuals had paused at a safe distance. No one advanced. She carefully turned him over, observing his chest for signs of life, his neck for a pulse. His complexion was ashen. A bluish tint was appearing on his lips. Denise placed her fingers on the side of his neck. She felt nothing. "Call 911," she shouted without looking up. Someone mumbled, already did, but it seemed unimportant. She began counting seconds. She tilted his head back, checking his airway. Then she leaned in, delivered 2 quick breaths, and started compressions. 1, 2, 3. Her hands moved as if she's done this many times before. But this wasn't a training dummy. This was real. This was a matter of life or death. An audience observed, whispering and recording with their phones. However, their presence was insignificant. It was solely about her and him, and the sound of her hands striking his chest. "Come on," she murmured. "Don't you dare give up." He appeared to be in his mid-50s, dressed in a fitted black workout set, with a wedding ring and an Apple Watch. He seemed like the type of man who should be too healthy to collapse in public. But hearts are not governed by appearances. 1 minute passed, then 2. Denise felt sweat soaking through her scrubs, her hair plastered to her forehead. Her arms were sore, and her back throbbed. She continued working, focusing on her breathing. She compressed and counted. The silence was intense, a silence that felt like it was holding its breath. Then he gasped. The breath was weak and strained, but it was a breath. Denise moved closer. "Hey, are you with me?" His eyelids flickered. His chest moved a slight movement. Paramedics arrived less than a minute later. 2 of them rushed from the ambulance, carrying equipment. "I got him breathing," Denise said swiftly, stepping aside to allow them to take over. "No pulse when I arrived." I immediately began compressions. One of the medics acknowledged her. "Are you a nurse?" She replied I was. He didn't have time to inquire further. They proceeded with urgency. Oxygen mask, defibrillator pads, and vital signs assessment. Denise retreated, allowing the trained professionals to take charge. Her hands trembled. Someone behind her commented, "You saved him." She turned to see a woman, mid-30s, a jogger, visibly anxious. "You were incredible," the woman added. I didn't know what to do." Denise nodded once, then turned her eyes back to the man on the ground. She didn't need thanks. She just needed him to live. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, one of the paramedics looked at her and said, "You bought him time. That man's lucky you were here." Denise gave a tired half-smile. "I guess we both are," she said, watching as the ambulance pulled away. Sirens off. That was usually a good sign. The crowd began to thin, individuals returning to their daily lives as if nothing had occurred, as though they hadn't just witnessed a stranger die and return before their very eyes. Denise remained still for a brief moment, her heart racing. She then proceeded back towards the bench where it all began, sat down once more, and picked up her phone. Mecca had sent another message. "Mom, are you okay? Would you like me to bring breakfast?" Denise gazed at the message, her thumbs pausing above the screen. She then typed, "I'll be home soon." An event occurred. "I'll explain when I return," she texted. She didn't know the man's name, didn't know if he'd survived the day. Her actions weren't for praise. It was a reaction. It was inherent. It was her purpose. Although her professional role had shifted, her identity remained unchanged. But the world had a peculiar habit of returning when you least anticipated it. Denise didn't realize how quickly that return would happen. 3 hours later, Denise was back home. Mud clung to her shoes, a souvenir from the park, and she was still wearing her scrubs. Mecca had prepared eggs and toast, placing them on the stove before heading to her shift at the daycare. The house was silent, punctuated only by the ticking of the wall clock, which consistently ran 5 minutes fast. Denise settled onto the front porch, cradling a chipped mug of green tea. She held it with both hands, attempting to find comfort in its warmth rather than dwell on the persistent tension beneath her ribs. Her thoughts were jumbled, with fragments of the incident in the park and recollections of the chilling email. She couldn't erase the image of his face, the initial stillness of his chest. She remembered the moment she felt a return of life under her hands. She had witnessed people flatline previously, but this felt deeply personal. She took a deliberate sip, then she registered the sound. Engines, several of them. She raised her head from her mug and blinked. 5 luxury vehicles approached her street, following one another. These weren't simply elegant cars. They were the type usually seen in magazines or on social media influencers' profiles. Among them was a Lucid Air, a Mercedes Maybach, a matte black Escalade reflecting the afternoon light, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, and trailing behind, a sleek Aston Martin that emitted a distinct, almost living sound. The vehicles decelerated and halted directly in front of her house. A peculiar sensation arose within her, not fear precisely, but a more profound feeling, a quiet prompting. This concerns the events that followed. The entrance of the Lucid opened. A man emerged, tall, wearing a sharp suit, untied, charcoal gray with a black shirt beneath. He was clean-shaven, silver highlighting his temples, his face bearing a tranquil expression as if possessing an eternity. It required a moment for recognition, but when he spoke, her breath halted. Ms. Lattimore, she rose deliberately. He advanced, his walk fluid and assured, yet unpretentious. "I believe you saved my life earlier today," he stated. At the park, Denise peered, trying to recognize him. Appearing calm, without any signs of distress, with his complexion restored and his eyes bright, he seemed almost transformed. But it was indeed him. You collapsed," she observed. "I did," he confirmed with a slight nod. "And I understand I wouldn't have recovered if it weren't for your assistance," she commented, setting down her mug. "How did you locate me?" He responded with a gentle, almost regretful smile. "A person with my resources usually has people managing specifics, but let's just say I was highly driven." She felt her throat tighten. "I didn't do it for any reason." "I know," he said swiftly. "That's precisely why I'm here." A younger woman, likely in her mid-30s, emerged from behind him, stepping out of the Escalade with a thick envelope and a small tablet. She remained silent, simply waiting. "My name's Roland Greaves," the man stated. "I have several companies, primarily in logistics and software. It's not a flashy business, but I've achieved success. Earlier today, I was approximately 30 seconds from not experiencing another sunrise." Denise adjusted her posture, her jaw moving. She wasn't certain of the direction this conversation would take, but it felt significant. "I want to speak with you," Roland stated. "Just 5 minutes. I'm not here to offer you a product or create a disturbance, but I have a debt I'm unsure how to resolve." She hesitated, remaining uncertain. She then said softly, "You're welcome to sit if you wish." He nodded once. "Thank you." They proceeded together to the porch. She observed the cars passing by. No one else emerged from the vehicles. As he settled into a chair, Roland surveyed the surroundings. "Pleasant place. It has a lived-in feel." "That's right," she replied. "Mecca's room is the one with the damaged blind." She explained that she had broken it while trying to chase away a wasp. He smiled. "Sounds like a spirited individual." "Is she?" A brief pause occurred. He then turned to her. "May I ask you a personal question?" She nodded. "Why didn't you wait for another person to assist?" Denise inhaled deeply. "Because if it were me, I would have hoped someone wouldn't wait." He observed his gaze downwards. He nodded slowly. Then, he looked in her eyes once more. I needed to hear that, but Roland hadn't come solely to thank her. He'd come with a proposition, one that would assess the extent of her trust in the kindness of strangers. Denise leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed over her chest. "So," she said, maintaining a level tone, "what precisely is this concerning?" Roland moved closer, his elbows gently on his knees. "You gave me 12 minutes of your time, and in those 12 minutes you didn't pause. You didn't inquire who I was or what I might provide. You simply defended me." Denise remained silent. She wasn't swayed by words. She's heard numerous eloquent presentations at hospital fundraisers and board meetings. This felt distinct, but she still didn't understand his direction. "I established a company from nothing," he stated. "It began in a garage in Baton Rouge. My first product was shipped from a rented storage unit. I navigated through losses, lawsuits, and everything in between. Now I have 500 employees and the ability to set my own guidelines." He paused. "But despite all of that, I've never encountered someone helping me without expecting something in return. Not since my mother. That sort of generosity. It alters your viewpoint." Denise observed him intently. "So, what exactly are you proposing, Mr. Greaves?" "I'm not seeking assistance." He raised a hand. "Nor am I. I'm not attempting to provide a rescue. I'm aiming to make an investment." She frowned slightly. I researched your background, he continued. After my assistant located the incident report, I requested your employment history. Hope you aren't upset. Denise gave a humorless laugh. I'm accustomed to people investigating my affairs. This week has been filled with new experiences. Roland smiled. You were the most sought-after nurse in your department. There were notes from patients in the files about you. One woman mentioned that you were the reason she was able to get out of bed following her surgery. She also threw a shoe at me when I instructed her to perform her breathing exercises. He laughed. Nevertheless, she recalled you fondly. Then he retrieved something from his pocket. It was small, square, and black. He sat on the arm of her chair. A key fob. What is that? She inquired, looking at it but not touching it. It's for one of the cars parked outside, he said. The Lucid. Brand new. It's yours if you'd like it. Denise paused, studying it. Are you serious? She asked. As a second heart attack. He replied, only partially teasing. She didn't take the key. Why me? She questioned. I don't know many people like you, he stated plainly, and I've been thinking lately. I want to surround myself with people who move toward the problem, not away from it. People who act without needing a reason. He looked at her, his expression gentling. So I'd like to offer you a job. Denise blinked. He continued, I'm launching a new initiative. A wellness foundation linked to our company, focused on underserved communities, free clinics, training programs, and mental health outreach. Needs assistance. Funding is available, but we lack the personnel to establish it. We require someone with your expertise to help build it. Someone who understands the system's complexities and knows what individuals truly need. He paused. You would be director of clinical programs, responsible for setting the strategic direction and building your own team. The compensation is excellent, with full benefits. And you would have the autonomy to shape the foundation. She stared at him, speechless. Alternatively, he suggested softly, you're allowed to decline. I will still provide the vehicle. I will still express my gratitude. However, if you accept, I believe we have the potential to create something substantial. A pause settled between them, but it lacked tension. At length, Denise inquired, what would motivate you to entrust such a significant duty to someone you have only just met? Roland remained composed, stating, because occasionally, the instance in which someone rescues your life reveals that they are the individual you were meant to have known from the beginning. Denise found herself at a loss for words. She glanced at the key fob once more. Then, she looked at him. You'll give me time to think, take as long as you want. Just know this. I didn't come here to reward you. I came because I think the world needs more people like you making decisions that matter. But as soon as Roland left, Denise's heart remained unsettled. If anything, it pounded faster, because accepting meant stepping into something she wasn't sure she could manage. And that scared her more than losing a job ever did. That night, Denise remained restless. She sat on the bed's edge in the dimness, the faint light from the hallway offering little illumination. Her fingers followed the contours of the advanced key fob still on her nightstand, and used since Roland departed. It seemed overly substantial, overly swift, too remarkable to be genuine. She had experienced disappointment previously, not solely connected to the hospital. Years earlier, Mecca's father had pledged them security, only to disappear as debts accumulated. Denise understood from a young age to be wary of smiles, even those that appeared gentle. However, this opportunity felt different. It wasn't charity, it was a chance, one she hadn't anticipated. Needing a moment to herself, she put on a hoodie, placed the key fob in her pocket, and went outside. The Lucid remained, parked silently beneath the streetlight, its design distinct, its paint rich and flawless like midnight. She opened the driver's side door, anticipating an alarm. There was none. The vehicle greeted her as if familiar with her. Within, the cabin remained still and quiet, the dashboard illuminated with a gentle hum. She refrained from starting the engine. Instead, she simply sat, her palms resting on the steering wheel, inhaling a scent reminiscent of fresh leather and potential. She didn't register Mecca until the passenger door opened. Okay, Mom, her daughter stated, entering the car. Who did you rescue? And what sort of James Bond operation were you involved in? Denise looked up, surprised. What are you doing awake? The porch light was on, and you weren't in your room. That's code for Mom is spiraling. Mecca glanced around. This car is insane, by the way. Denise sighed. It was the man in the park. He found me. Mecca turned sharply. What? How? He's not just some guy. His name's Roland Greaves, owns like 3 companies. He offered me a job. Mecca's eyes widened. Doing what? Building something. A clinic. A program. He wants me to run it. Wait. He once met you, almost lost his life, and now wants you to lead his company's health division? That's the summary. Mecca reclined in the seat. And you're presently in the car he provided. Because you haven't decided yet. I don't want to accept something I didn't earn. Mom, Mecca said, looking at her. You save his life. You deserve the air in this car. Denise remained quiet. Look, Mecca continued. I understand. You're apprehensive. This feels like an opportunity that's almost unbelievable. You always said, fear doesn't get to run the show. You told me that the night before my first recital. That was different. No, it wasn't. Mecca's voice softened. This might be the first time in your life someone sees your worth openly. Not after 10 years. Not when you're desperate. But right now. And you're hesitating because you're used to fighting for scraps. Denise turned to look at her. You think I should take it? I think. Do not allow fear to guide your decision. They remained silent for a while longer. The following morning, Denise drove the Lucid. She drove slowly, not far, just a few miles down to a nearby diner, where she and Mecca used to eat breakfast when Mecca was little. She needed a place to think without feeling confined. While she drank her coffee, an older man in a corduroy jacket sitting at the counter gave her a polite nod. Beautiful car outside, he said. Denise turned, feeling a little unsteady, still adjusting. Can't complain about good fortune, he remarked, moving his cup. You simply need to ensure you utilize it wisely. But Denise understood that blessings invariably carried a cost, and the subsequent action would necessitate her abandoning everything she believed about herself, to evolve into someone else. Assuming she possessed the bravery, Denise remained in her kitchen, her arms crossed, observing the document Roland's assistant had provided. It detailed the job description and compensation package. The title, Director of Clinical Programs, still felt unfamiliar, like something that belonged to someone else. The numbers on the salary line alone made her chest tighten. She'd always been modest, made her way on steady, honest work. Never dreamed of 6 figures, certainly not with benefits and a personal driver listed in the perks. It felt unreal, uncomfortable even, but not because it wasn't real, because part of her believed she didn't deserve it. Denise answered the phone, not to contact Roland, but to reach out to someone else, a name she hadn't spoken in years. Hi, is this Bernardine Willis? A moment of silence. Then a recognizable voice responded, Yes, who is calling? It was Denise. Denise Lattimore. They had worked together at Jefferson Medical when they were both assigned to the night shift. Another pause, then a surprised laugh. Girl, are you kidding me? Denise? From 2A? I thought you disappeared. I was let go this week. The line was silent for a moment. And you? You were excellent. That's what I believed as well. Denise outlined the situation concisely. The collapse. The man. The offer. Bernardine expressed quiet disbelief. And you're contacting me because? Because I harbor doubts. And because I fear I might not be adequate. Bernardine responded immediately. Denise, the hospital never appreciated your value. We all recognize that. You mentored half those new employees while they rewarded positions to individuals who couldn't recall the crash cart protocols. Denise laughed once. I recall, when someone recognizes your value and offers you the opportunity to influence things, embrace it. Denise felt a warmth behind her eyes. And what if it fails? She inquired. Then you'll leave with your head held high, as you always have. But don't decline because you believe you'll be out of place. You're not. More than most. That night, Denise didn't pace the floor. She didn't overthink. She retrieved the contract, reviewed it completely, and then signed. The following morning, Roland contacted her. I allowed you a few days, he stated. You weren't required to have them, Denise responded. My decision is made. A pause followed on his end, then a drawn-out breath. Are you certain? I am certain. She continued. However, I require one thing from you. Anything. She clarified, I don't want to be a token hire. I don't want you to showcase me as your feel-good project. If I am joining, I'm coming to work. I will build the team. I will call the shots. Roland's voice became serious. That's precisely why I wanted you, he said. And with a chuckle, he added, I'm not addressing you as sir. Deal, he concluded. A meeting was scheduled for Monday. He would have his legal team finalize onboarding procedures. She would visit the campus they were assessing in Tuscaloosa, the location for the first community clinic. After she ended the call, Denise paused in the kitchen, her bare feet on the tile floor, as sunlight streamed through the blinds. She had just made what felt like the biggest decision of her life. It wasn't born of necessity, but of deliberate choice. Mecca appeared at the head of the stairs, still in pajamas, rubbing her eyes. You're up early, she observed. I have work to do. Her daughter addressed her. Did you take it? Mecca replied, I did. Mecca smiled. I'm proud of you, Mom, she said. I'm proud of me too. However, Denise understood that this wasn't the conclusion. It marked the start of a life she never imagined achieving, and she was now entering it, not as someone pleading for a place, but as someone asserting her right to it. When Denise first passed through the double glass doors of the building in Tuscaloosa, the feeling wasn't one of intrusion. It felt like returning to a familiar place. The building wasn't elaborate, not yet. The flooring was concrete, the walls unadorned, and wires still protruded from the ceiling, but she envisioned it clearly. She saw the intake desk positioned to the right, a children's play area directly opposite, consultation rooms extending along the rear hallway, a location where care would not be a luxury. It would be commonplace. Roland entered, carrying rolled-up blueprints beneath one arm and a coffee in the other. He gave it to her silently. She smiled and accepted it. Day one, he stated. More like step one, she responded. During the subsequent weeks, Denise began her work. She sought out not only former colleagues, but also individuals who had been overlooked, underutilized, and undervalued. This included nurses, aides, translators, and even a former janitor who desired to learn administrative tasks. Denise possessed the ability to nurture potential, training those with the willingness to learn. Her focus wasn't constructing a clinic, it was cultivating a culture. Each morning, she drove the same car, a gift from Lucid Greaves, not to display it, but to recall the origins of her work. It was a reminder of that pivotal moment in the park, hands placed on a stranger's chest, desperately hoping to detect a heartbeat. After 6 months, the clinic quietly opened its doors, without fanfare or publicity, simply relying on patience. A woman accompanied by her 2 children, who had not received medical care in 3 years. A man with uncontrolled diabetes, a teenager seeking assistance with anxiety. Denise welcomed each individual as if they were old friends. There were no barriers of paperwork or procedure, just compassionate care. One afternoon, while she was revising intake protocols at her desk, her receptionist softly knocked on the open door and announced, "There's someone here requesting to see you." Without a name given, Denise entered the lobby and paused, visibly surprised. He was the man from the park. Roland had visited, sure, but this wasn't him. This was the man she'd knelt beside, whose chest she compressed until life returned. Dressed in a simple navy sweater and jeans, with a quiet smile that conveyed something deeper than words. "I never thanked you properly," he said. "You did more than enough." He walked over slowly, pulled something from his pocket. A small, flat velvet box. Denise shook her head. "If that's jewelry, I swear I'll toss it right back." He laughed. "No, it's not jewelry." She opened the box. Inside was a bronze medallion, etched with an emblem she didn't recognize. "It's from my mother's side," he said. "Passed down 3 generations. My grandmother gave it to my mom when she became the first black woman in her district to run a public health clinic." Denise's fingers closed gently around it. "I think she'd have wanted you to have it." She swallowed hard. "I'm not family." "You're exactly what family looks like," he said softly. "At least the kind that saves lives." Later that night, Denise sat on her porch again. Not with tea, with silence. The good kind. The kind that lets you breathe. The street was quiet. No more engines. No more questions. Just peace. Mecca stepped out, leaned on the railing beside her. "Long day?" she asked. "Best kind," Denise said. They sat together, watching the sky turn purple over the rooftops. After a long pause, Mecca said, "It's funny. What is? How you save a life, and somehow it ended up saving yours too." Denise didn't reply. She didn't need to, because she understood now. Some moments fundamentally alter everything. Not because they're dramatic or widely known, but because they reveal your true character when you are alone. And when you act from love, without any expectation of reward, sometimes life responds in an unexpected way. Should you find yourself in a situation where your efforts feel unseen and your work goes unrecognized, please recall this. Gratitude may not always be expressed openly, but it remains. And when it does reappear, it can be more significant than you could have foreseen. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who could benefit from hearing it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We have more stories similar to this that demonstrate the profound impact of a single positive decision. A $1 million neighborhood was constructed on land that had been in his family for over a century. However, when Elijah presented a handwritten clause dated 1923, the entire development and every home within it legally reverted to his ownership. Elijah Jackson didn't require an alarm clock. For 30 years, he had woken naturally just before sunrise, made his coffee, and walked out to the back porch of his father's old farmhouse near Opelika, Alabama. From that quiet wooden deck, he had a clear view across the southern field, the very field where his great-grandfather Otis grew sweet potatoes in the 1930s, and where Elijah's own children had once played in the tall grass. But that morning, something was amiss. The ground felt altered. It trembled. Elijah peered into the distance. Beyond the trees, past the fence line, plumes of red dirt rose into the sky. The machinery was present, heavy, loud, and incongruous. He placed his coffee down and headed towards the sound. Reaching the ridge, he halted, stunned. 3 bulldozers were visible. Behind them, construction teams in hard hats and neon vests were marking the ground with flags, as if claiming it was unclaimed land. But it wasn't. He quickened his pace, the Georgia clay swirling up around his boots. "Hey," he called. A woman in a light gray blazer turned toward him, sunglasses and a clipboard in hand. She seemed out of place in a field. She appeared someone who had never worn work boots. "Can I assist you, sir?" she inquired, her voice suggesting she already anticipated the response. Elijah surveyed the scene. "What is the purpose of your presence on my land?" Her eyebrow showed little movement. This parcel was approved for residential development under West Haven HOA's expansion permit. "You must be mistaken." "Mistaken?" Elijah's voice rose slightly. "My name is Elijah Jackson. That piece of land has been in my family since 1923. It is not for sale. It never has been." The woman held her clipboard up like a shield. County records indicate this section was listed as unclaimed due to boundary discrepancies during the last zoning update. "You're welcome to speak with our legal team, but construction is already underway." Elijah's heart was thumping hard now, but not from fear. "Ma'am, that land is not unclaimed. I have walked it every morning since I was 27 years old. My father was born right over that rise. You're building on ground that holds more history than you could encompass with your permits." She offered a polite, empty smile. "Then I suggest you take it up with zoning and planning. We're moving forward." The machines revved louder behind her. Foundations were being dug. Trees that once shaded Elijah's childhood baseball games were now being stripped away root by root. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He simply turned and walked back towards his house. His pace was slower now. Inside, he went directly to the cabinet above the fireplace. It held old papers, maps, and deeds, dusty and yellowed with age. He recalled his father once saying Otis didn't trust anybody with this land, not even the government. At the time, Elijah had considered it mere paranoia. But as the ground outside was being torn apart, that paranoia felt more like protection. He carefully unfolded the brittle deed and saw it. The faded ink revealed Otis Jackson's name. 88 acres were purchased for $480 in 1923. There were no loans, no banks involved. It was built on sweat, grit, and the unwavering pride of a man determined to leave nothing for anyone else to claim. Elijah settled down. Documents lay before him. A growing unease began in his stomach. Something felt amiss. This wasn't simply a clerical error. He reached for the phone and contacted the Lee County Zoning Office. "I'm calling regarding a construction crew impacting a portion of my property. My name is Elijah Jackson. My family has owned this land for over 100 years. The person I spoke with initially responded with a detached, scripted tone. They stated that if my land was affected by the zoning realignment, I should have received a mail notification. I did not receive any notification. They suggested that notices can occasionally be lost, and then ended the conversation. It was dismissed with that, lost. Potentially, decades of family ownership could be jeopardized by a misplaced envelope. However, Elijah wasn't solely feeling anger. He recalled a story his father had shared with him. Years had passed since Elijah had last touched the old trunk located at the back of the hallway closet. He pulled it out slowly, coughing as dust filled the narrow corridor. His knees cracked as he knelt, unlatching the brass lock. The lid opened with a tired creak. Inside, among black and white photos, funeral programs, and Otis's tarnished railroad watch, was a bundle of paper wrapped in oilcloth, precisely where his father indicated it would be. Elijah was seated on the floor, cross-legged, carefully unrolling the cloth and retrieving a weighty, leather-bound envelope. This was the original deed, the one Otis had kept for himself. Initially, it appeared like any other legal document: printed text, handwritten notes in the margins, a wax seal partially worn. However, concealed roughly midway through the second page, in Otis's faint, cursive writing, was something unexpected. In his own handwriting, squeezed into the margins, a note read, "If any buildings are built on this land without the agreement of the deed holder or their closest relative, those buildings will automatically belong to the deed holder and no payment will be given." This was witnessed and signed on February 2nd, 1923. Elijah blinked. He read it again and again. His hands trembled. He wasn't legally trained, unlike lawyers, but he knew the story behind that clause. It concerned how Otis had distrusted men in suits, particularly landmen. Following a near deception in 1931, where he almost sold half the property for a minimal price, Otis had personally compensated a notary to assist him in drafting what he termed a safeguard impenetrable to any attempt to bypass it. This safeguard wasn't constructed from physical materials like wood or wire. It was comprised of carefully chosen words. Elijah reached for the telephone once more. He contacted Mr. Boone, the local attorney his family had relied on for 3 generations. "I need to show you something," Elijah stated. "It's about the land, about Otis." After 3 hours, Elijah was seated in the worn leather armchair, facing Boone's desk. The lawyer peered through bifocals, carefully examining the document. "Well, I'll be," he remarked, tapping a knuckle against the clause. "You don't see this kind of thing anymore, but it's clever. If this was notarized and filed with the original deed, it's enforceable." "It is notarized," Elijah said. Otis made absolutely certain of that. Boone nodded. "It's old, yes, but if it's on the record, it's still the law. It might be buried in archives somewhere, but that doesn't make it disappear. So what do I do?" "First," Boone said, pulling a legal pad toward him, "you don't say a word to those developers. Let them build. Every house they finish becomes yours. It wasn't due to your identity, but because of Otis. That man didn't simply leave you land. He left you a carefully constructed snare. A remarkably clever one." Elijah relaxed, feeling the significance of it acutely. He's been prepared to initiate a conflict, enter courtrooms, and navigate bureaucratic hurdles to demonstrate what rightfully belonged to him. But Otis had already handled the struggle. Now, Elijah only needed to wait. Nevertheless, he wasn't foolish. He contacted 2 additional lawyers, just to be certain. One for Montgomery, one for Birmingham. He provided them with scanned copies of the deed, the clause, and the notarization. Both contacted him again within a week. "This is the most secure private property clause I've ever encountered," one stated, "Mr. Jackson. It's as if your great-grandfather constructed a legal landmine." The other remarked, I've never seen anything like it. As long as you record the construction, everything they build becomes yours. Every nail, every foundation. Consequently, Elijah purchased a drone and employed a professional surveyor. Motion sensor cameras were installed along the southern field's edge. He meticulously documented everything. This included timestamps, recorded footage, ground measurements, copies of sale signs, and open house flyers. Each day, he observed the actions of the West Haven HOA, actions that he believed they should never have taken. They constructed as if they held absolute ownership and marketed as if they had the right to sell. But Elijah understood the truth. And Otis? Otis had anticipated this day for 100 years. If the clause proved to be true, Elijah understood he had a single course of action remaining: to wait. Each morning, shortly after sunrise, Elijah would position himself on the grassy ridge, the site of the former barbed wire fence. He would rest against the wooden post that he and his father had set into the ground many years prior, with his arms crossed and a camera around his neck, observing. The land below was undergoing change. Where sweet potatoes once grew and his cousin had broken his leg attempting to ride a makeshift dirt bike, now stood rows of modern homes. The exteriors featured vinyl siding in muted colors, fenced-in backyards, and driveways so smooth they didn't feel like they belonged in the country. It felt like watching someone else rearrange your childhood memories without permission. Roads were paved with names like Sycamore Lane and Sunset Walk. Pretty names, but lacking any history. Light poles were installed, sidewalks were poured, and even a cul-de-sac was added that cut right through the grove where Elijah's mother had planted muscadines. The HOA proceeded quickly. Too quickly. Within a month, foundations were set for 20 homes. Real estate agents began appearing on weekends, conducting open houses and offering guided tours to couples and retirees. Large signs near the front entrance announced, "Now selling," starting at $385,000. Elijah remained silent. He simply observed. He recorded everything. Daily drone footage was recorded. Close-up photos of property markers were taken. Videos documented workers pouring concrete, installing electrical lines, and setting frames. He organized all of this in a folder on his laptop labeled Otis's Revenge. Occasionally, a project manager or a site supervisor noticed him. Sometimes they waved. Once a man with a clipboard called out, "Morning," with forced cheerfulness. Elijah did not reply. His purpose was not to socialize. He was there to observe. Then Jessica arrived. Jessica Brenner. She remained consistently the woman she had always been, clipboard and blazer. Initially, she didn't recognize Elijah upon his reappearance at the ridge. However, within 3 weeks, she began to acknowledge him. On one occasion, she smiled and called out, "Still watching us, Mr. Jackson?" Elijah responded by raising his camera and photographing her. She did not smile again afterward. New houses appeared rapidly, like weeds spreading. The swift pace was unsettling. One day, there would be bare ground. 3 days elapsed, and the construction reached the stage of a complete frame and roof. By the close of the second month, 32 homes had been framed. Of those, 16 were completed, featuring laid sod and polished front porches ready for weekend viewings. Elijah, however, remained undeterred. He proceeded to the county clerk's office to retrieve the most recent sales records. He observed West Haven's name appearing alongside buyers, with the buyers primarily from out of state, Ohio, Florida, and even some originating from California. He meticulously recorded observations, noting each closing date. He verified the location of each home, confirming its presence within the 88-acre zone. All residences were situated inside Otis's boundary. All of them. He even overheard Jessica one morning, speaking on the phone while walking the site. She said, "Yeah, Phase 1's flying off the market. We're starting Phase 2 next month. No issues on our end. The local guy watching from the ridge, just some nosy landowner trying to stir up drama. We're clear." Elijah clenched his teeth, but remained silent. She had no idea. He possessed 3 legal opinions supporting his position. He had documented evidence, with timestamps, of construction on the contested land. He had Otis's clause, And crucially, he had time. Allowing them to build wasn't merely a tactic, it was a matter of justice. Each home they finished, every square foot they sold, contributed to a debt they were unaware of accumulating. Elijah had already calculated the figures. If the construction followed the initial plan for all 156 homes, along with the community clubhouse and parkland, the total value of the real estate would approach $70 million. This would be transferred to him. Jessica believed she was developing a neighborhood, but Elijah understood the reality. She was, in effect, expanding his portfolio. However, as the sold signs accumulated, Elijah started questioning how long he could delay the arrival of actual families. The first time Elijah observed children cycling on the newly constructed sidewalks, he experienced a disconcerting sensation in his chest. A profound sadness, not anger nor regret. The children were oblivious. Naturally, they played, circling, chasing, laughing as children do. Their parents watched, enjoying coffee on porches overlooking the Jackson property. This was land Elijah's great-grandfather had cleared manually. A few houses down, a young couple was unpacking boxes. The man waved. Elijah raised his hand a little, without knowing why. He was unfamiliar with them. They were unfamiliar with him. The new driveway occupied what had previously been his grandmother's garden. He walked home at a slower pace that day, not due to any need discomfort, but because the anger that had propelled him was beginning to transform into a different feeling. That evening, he was alone in his den, the deed spread out before him, as usual. The clause remained present, tangible, and still his. However, now he saw faces connected to the houses. He recognized people, not suits, not developers. Families were attempting to establish themselves on property they were unaware was not available for purchase. He reached for the telephone and contacted Boone. "I need to discuss something with you," Elijah stated. Boone responded, "I'm listening." Elijah continued, "If I delay until all the houses are completed, the price will increase significantly. However, if I intervene now, I might prevent these people from facing a difficult situation. They've just moved in, Boone. I observed a young girl riding a bicycle with training wheels today." A considerable silence followed. Boone's voice softened. "That presents a difficult ethical decision, Elijah. You are requesting something that is not permissible. It's a personal matter. Legally, you are justified, as Otis confirmed. However, what kind of justice do you seek?" "I am unwilling to cause harm to these individuals," Elijah stated. "Yet, I do want West Haven to be held accountable. They didn't merely trespass. They obliterated my family's history as if it held no significance. Then perhaps the true inquiry is it possible to inflict pain upon them without harming the people who purchased those homes in good faith?" Elijah rubbed his eyes. "Is it possible?" Boone paused once more. "Gaining their commitment requires careful consideration and meticulous attention to detail. Allow them to actively participate in the process, enabling them to take ownership. Ensure your guidance is clear and impactful, so it resonates even before others become involved." Elijah reclined in his chair. The ceiling fan rotated slowly above him. "I observed someone planting a tree today," he remarked quietly. He appeared pleased, as if envisioning this as their permanent residence. "Perhaps it still could be," Boone responded. "The outcome relies on your actions." That night, Elijah experienced little sleep. He revisited the perimeter of the property, holding a flashlight, observing lights shimmering from windows overlooking the southern field. Within those houses, families were establishing themselves, displaying pictures, preparing meals, and putting children to sleep. He couldn't have been responsible for their losses, yet he couldn't overlook the arrogance of West Haven, Jessica Brenner's dismissive gesture, the unanswered calls from their lawyers, and their disregard for generations, as if constructing on unclaimed territory. Elijah remained motionless for an extended period at the tree line. The wind rustled through the tall grass. He recalled Otis, remembering the nights that man had kept watch on the porch, a shotgun resting across his lap, prepared for any trouble. Otis favored immediate action. However, Elijah valued strategy and carefully considered his options. He resolved to wait until the final brick was in place, not to inflict harm upon the families, but to ensure those who had shown disrespect towards his family faced the complete consequence. And then, he would ensure no one ever forgot the name Otis Jackson. But Elijah understood that patience wouldn't simplify the next phase. It would only make it more significant. The notification arrived by mail, enclosed within a polished invitation featuring gold detailing. You are cordially invited to the grand opening of West Haven Estates, Phase 2 celebration and ribbon-cutting ceremony. Join us for food, live music, and a look at the future of luxury living in Easter Alabama. Elijah examined the card for a minute before setting it on the kitchen counter beside the deed. The event was scheduled for a Saturday morning in April. At that time, 138 homes were completely built. An additional 18 were undergoing final inspections. The community center had recently opened, featuring a pool, tennis courts, and a marble floor lobby resembling a country club. It was being hailed as the crown jewel of the county, and every inch of it was situated on Jackson land. The night before, Elijah carefully ironed his only suit, the one he wore to church, weddings, and funerals, paying special attention to the cuffs, a detail Otis would have emphasized. He packed a leather folder containing the original deed, the notarized clause, the surveyor's report, photo evidence, and legal opinions. He placed it on the passenger seat with the care one would give a newborn child. As he arrived at the newly paved entrance of West Haven Estates, the morning sun broke through. Banners fluttered in the breeze. A white tent stood on the clubhouse lawn where guests enjoyed champagne and sampled small sandwiches off silver trays. He parked near the back of the lot, concealed from view. No one recognized him. Not yet. From the periphery of the gathering, Elijah observed as Jessica Brenner, wearing a vibrant yellow dress and large sunglasses, approached the podium. Microphones were adjusted. Camera flashes went off. "Welcome," she exclaimed. "Today signifies both the completion of our second phase and the beginning of a promising new era for our community." Applause resonated. The mayor stood beside her. Several county officials, whom Elijah had contacted months prior without receiving a response, were also present. Jessica continued, her voice gaining intensity with each phrase. "Thanks to our exceptional team and the backing of our local government, West Haven is now a home to 156 families and expanding." The string quartet played gently in the background. Elijah moved forward deliberately, the sound of his shoes on the gravel noticeable. Jessica looked towards him, but showed no reaction. Not yet. He raised his voice just enough to be heard over the music. "Before you cut that ribbon," he said calmly, and the crowd fell silent, heads turning. Jessica blinked. "Mr. Jackson," she said, her voice strained. "This is a private event." "I understand precisely what this concerns," Elijah stated. "That is why I am present." The mayor appeared doubtful. "Could you please elaborate on the problem?" Elijah raised a leather folder. "I am Elijah Jackson. My family has held title to this land for more than 100 years, and every house, road, tennis court, and mailbox West Haven constructed sits on property that was never legally theirs." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the audience. Jessica moved away from the podium. "We pursued all legal avenues. A zoning error occurred some time back that you failed to fix," Elijah added, opening the file. "And significantly, this deed from 1923 includes a provision drafted by my great-grandfather. It specifies that any building constructed without permission transfers ownership to the deed's owner." He presented the document. A reporter, standing close, moved to photograph the page. Jessica's expression remained unchanged. "You're attempting to deceive us," she whispered. "That clause is invalid after this length of time." Elijah remained unmoved. "I've had this examined by 3 lawyers. They all concurred. It carries legal weight. This land belongs to me, and everything constructed upon it as well." A man in a gray suit spoke quietly to Jessica. She visibly paled. The mayor cleared his throat. "We might need to suspend the ceremony." Jessica faced Elijah again, her voice now firm. "You observed. You monitored our construction, and you remained silent. I informed you on your initial visit that it was my land," he stated calmly. "I saw you smile, and you called security, instructed me to speak with your legal team. So I did. A gasp came from behind you. It could have been a homeowner or someone else. Reporters were now gathering, with flash bulbs popping and pens writing furiously. Jessica appeared as if she'd swallowed glass. "You'll never get away with this," she whispered. "I don't have to get away with anything," Elijah replied. "You passed the folder to me." He closed it carefully and stepped back. The ceremony was halted. No ribbon was cut. Elijah recognized this as merely the initial stage. The significant repercussions hadn't yet materialized. The following morning, Elijah's phone began ringing before sunrise. An unknown number appeared. He allowed it to proceed to voicemail. Subsequently, it rang again and again. By the afternoon, he had accumulated 12 missed calls for voicemails and 2 emails flagged as urgent from West Haven's legal team. By evening, the local news had broadcast a segment entitled "Man Claims Ownership of Entire HOA Community." Is it legal? The anchor appeared bewildered. Elijah was not. He was at his kitchen table with Boone, examining the deed for what seemed like the 100th time. The wording hadn't changed. The ink remained faded but legible. Boone reclined. "They are panicking. They constructed $1 million project on land they didn't own. You possess every advantage." That night, West Haven's president telephoned directly. Elijah didn't recognize the voice. He had never communicated with the man previously, but he detected the strain. "Mr. Jackson, I believe it is time we consider a resolution. We are keen to resolve this matter swiftly and discreetly. The current media coverage is not beneficial to anyone involved. We are ready to provide you with appropriate compensation for the land's assessed value, alongside a goodwill premium." Elijah didn't react with laughter, though it was evident he was restraining himself. "You're suggesting a payment equivalent to the land's previous worth, prior to the construction of the luxury neighborhood? That's a significant offer. It feels like an offensive proposition." Elijah stated, "You didn't simply relocate Earth. You sold property you didn't own, and now you wish to purchase it at a reduced price after you sold it for millions?" Silence followed, and Elijah could hear the breathing on the other end. Controlled. Stiff. "We could challenge this, Mr. Jackson." "You could." Elijah concurred. "But every home you constructed is already sold. Every buyer now has to question who owns their house. You wish to fight? That will be complicated, costly, and public." Another lengthy pause. "We'll be in touch." The line disconnected. 2 days later, the formal offer arrived via courier. The offer included $4.2 million for the land, a non-disclosure agreement, and a confirmation that Elijah would relinquish all claims to the structures built. Boone reacted with disbelief, nearly choking on his coffee. "I've seen offers disguised as bribes before, but this is exceptional," he remarked, pushing the proposal away. Elijah remained silent, his attention fixed on his neighbor's children using a trampoline recently installed where his grandfather used to park his tractor. He was unwilling to have those children displaced. He was unwilling to have those families hurt. However, he also would not allow West Haven to escape with minimal consequences. Therefore, Elijah prepared a response. He refused the offer, requesting the complete assessed value for each sold home and unsold lot, reduced by a 10% discount for a comprehensive settlement. He pledged not to initiate eviction or repossession, but stipulated that West Haven must cover the legal expenses for each homeowner requiring a revised deed. He insisted on ownership of the community center, parks, and all remaining properties, requesting $61 million. There were no restrictions on speaking publicly, and a public apology was required. Jessica did not contact anyone. Her name was absent from any new official communications, though Elijah received reports. She was reportedly on leave. Some believed she had been dismissed, while others said she resigned. Regardless, the dispute had escalated to the boardroom. During the following 4 weeks, legal representatives from both parties met almost daily. Boone and Simone were seated opposite West Haven's corporate counsel, meticulously negotiating while Elijah largely observed the proceedings. They explored various approaches, proposing a reduced sum, hinting at arbitration, and even implying Elijah had knowingly permitted construction to proceed. Elijah remained composed, stating, You built on my land. I didn't request it. I cautioned you against it. You disregarded me. Ultimately, West Haven conceded. The concluding agreement was finalized 6 weeks after the unsuccessful ribbon cutting. Elijah's total compensation amounted to $54 million, along with ownership of the community clubhouse, the undeveloped lots, and complete legal authority to oversee the correction of homeowner deeds, ensuring no families were displaced. The settlement was formally revealed at a public press conference. Elijah made brief remarks, expressing gratitude to his great-grandfather for his vision and noting that the past occasionally safeguards the future. He departed quietly, avoiding any media attention or interviews. A desire for tranquility remained. However, Elijah wasn't complete. He needed to ensure Otis's legacy represented something greater than retribution. The funds didn't alter Elijah, not in the anticipated manner. He continued to reside in the familiar house, the aged farmhouse where he'd spent his childhood, where his mother's cooking had permeated the walls with the aroma of fried okra, and where Otis's hammer marks were still evident in the doorframe. He didn't purchase a new truck, didn't relocate to a larger city, didn't install fencing around the land. He did, however, create something tangible. Several months following the agreement, Elijah utilized a segment of the funds, approximately $18 million, to purchase an additional 40-acre parcel of land situated 10 miles east outside the town of Tuskegee. This was land that had remained unclaimed for decades. He designated it the Otis Project. Working alongside local contractors, teachers, and community leaders, Elijah initiated the construction of what he envisioned as a unique neighborhood, designed not for financial gain, but for individuals who had previously been excluded from residing in areas like West Haven. The homes were offered at cost, with mortgage support integrated into the program, and applications were evaluated with empathy rather than relying solely on credit scores. Within the first year, 24 homes were finished, and each was occupied by a family. Individuals from all walks of life, teachers, single parents, factory workers, veterans, were welcomed, regardless of their circumstances. One morning, while standing on the first street of the Otis Project, Elijah observed a group of children playing tag on a front lawn. One little boy sparked a memory of his brother Curtis when they were 7 and too stubborn to wear shoes during summer. Boone arrived later that afternoon, holding a clipboard and a wide grin. "You know what they're calling you in town now," he said. Elijah raised an eyebrow. "What?" "The accidental mayor," Boone chuckled. "People say you were given millions, and instead of vanishing, you began constructing front porches." Elijah smiled. Otis didn't nurture hoarders. He cultivated workers. This wasn't merely words. Elijah utilized a portion of the remaining funds to establish a community center in Opelika, offering complimentary tutoring programs, job placement assistance, and a garden where seniors instructed children on cultivating tomatoes that weren't purchased from a grocery store. He also transformed the former West Haven Community Clubhouse, which he now legally owned, into a shared resource center, renaming it Jackson Hall. The tennis courts were made available for complimentary lessons to local young people. The pool offered dedicated swim times for seniors 3 mornings each week. While the Homeowners Association initially disapproved, the homeowners themselves greatly appreciated the changes. Initially, a small number of residents distanced themselves from Elijah, fearing he would seize their homes and viewing him as an adversary. Eventually, they understood that he didn't intend to dismantle what they had established. He simply desired recognition for the work his family had previously undertaken. Now, many approached him directly, seeking information about repairs, suggestions for local services, or guidance on cultivating vegetables in Alabama's challenging red clay. He consistently offered assistance to everyone. "I ain't trying to be a hero," he told a vet, a single mom, and one of the new homeowners. "I simply believe land should never be taken without acknowledging those who labored upon it previously." Yvette nodded. "Well, my son considers you a kind of superhero," Elijah chuckled. "Have you ever seen me attempt to change a flat tire?" He's likely to reconsider quickly. With the commencement of the second year of the Otis Project, Elijah made a final visit to the county archives. This building, where he initially retrieved the original deed, now displayed a framed photograph of Otis Jackson. Below the photo was a plaque that read, "In honor of the man who protected his land so his descendants could protect their community." Elijah stood silently for a moment, then reached into his pocket. He removed a small object wrapped in cloth, Otis's old railroad watch. He carefully set it on the glass counter close to the display. "I always detest being late," Elijah murmured. The sky outside had shifted to that gentle golden hue just prior to sunset, the very shade Otis would often appreciate following a lengthy day in the fields. Elijah smiled, not the smile of a victor, but the smile of one who had fulfilled an obligation. For ultimately, the clause wasn't simply about preventing thieves, it was about ensuring no one overlooked those who preceded them. And now, the land was speaking once more, its voice stronger than the sound of the bulldozers. If this narrative resonated with you, please consider subscribing. More stories such as this, authentic, unfiltered, and grounded in truth, are forthcoming. Two teenagers walked into a car dealership with nothing but excitement and respect. Minutes later, they were asked to leave due to appearing suspicious. The following day, their billionaire father arrived, not to express anger, but to ensure the incident was publicly acknowledged. The sun was heavy over Tempe that afternoon, one of those dry, slow-moving Arizona days where the heat hums through the concrete. After track practice, Malik Townsend walked alongside his sister Ayanna through the parking lot of Madison Auto Gallery, his gray t-shirt damp against his back. They weren't intending to cause any disturbance. Malik, in fact, had been discussing this visit all week. "I'm not saying I'm getting a car today," he said, adjusting the strap of his gym bag. "But I want to see what they have. Maybe something used, you know?" Ayanna laughed, tossing her braids over her shoulder just to gauge expectations before her birthday. "You really think Dad is going to let you drive yourself to school in a two-door coupe?" "Come on," he smiled, but his steps didn't slow. "Let me dream." The dealership lot was still. Sleek silver sedans were arranged under sun-faded flags. The glass doors reflected the heat, and the two entered as any pair of kids with questions and wide eyes. The air conditioning inside was sharp, a contrast to the warmth outside. A middle-aged man wearing a pale blue dress shirt looked up from behind a counter. His gaze first fell on Malik, then moved to Ayanna. They were neatly dressed, Malik in athletic gear, Ayanna in a simple dress and sneakers. Their appearance was unassuming, quiet. Nevertheless, the man rose quickly. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice concise. Malik, always courteous, approached. "Yeah, just checking out some cars. Maybe looking for something used?" "My birthday is next month, and do you have an appointment?" A man interrupted, already walking toward them. Malik hesitated. "No, we do not allow unsupervised minors in the showroom." He cut in, glancing quickly at a coworker across the room. "Company policy," Ayanna's face shifted. "We're not touching anything. Still, this is not a hangout spot." His tone had turned colder now. "You can look at the website if you're interested." The silence that followed was thick. Malik started to speak, then stopped. Ayanna's fingers gripped the bag strap with force. "We'll leave," Malik said softly. They departed as such. There was no shouting, no resistance. Only the measured walk back along the sidewalk, with Ayanna holding her breath throughout. She remained silent until they were settled in the back of the Uber before she spoke. "That man regarded us as if we were insignificant." Malik acknowledged with a single, almost imperceptible nod. His jaw tightened. He touched his phone screen, verifying the ride time, and then gazed out the window. Ayanna observed her brother's reflection in the glass. She noticed how withdrawn he had become. He wasn't typically a boisterous person, but this felt different. It wasn't simply quietness, it was control. She remembered seeing that expression on their dad's face once before. "You're not going to tell Dad, are you?" He hesitated before replying. "Malik? I don't know," he finally said. "I don't even know what to call it." It's not like the man had said anything outlandish. He simply didn't want us present. Ayanna reclined. It seemed unbelievable to me. Neither of them spoke for the remainder of the journey. It wasn't necessary. They were both aware of what had transpired. However, the man at the dealership was completely unaware of who he had just dismissed. And by the following morning, he would discover it. The Uber proceeded through the hills of Paradise Valley, where the houses grew larger, quieter, and more dispersed as they ascended. Ayana sat with her arms crossed inside the black SUV, the tinted windows shielding her simmering frustration. Malik remained silent, holding his phone with the screen dark. His thoughts drifted away. Their home appeared, a contemporary white and stone house situated behind a private gate. It wasn't ostentatious, but possessed an expensive quality typical of established wealth or astute financial acumen. Their father, Charles Townsend, had constructed his technology company from the ground up, initially offering hardware repairs in Flagstaff before achieving success with a data security startup. Currently, his name appeared in Forbes articles and at Silicon Valley panel discussions. However, locally, he was simply known as Charles. The children entered through the side entrance and placed their belongings on the bench close to the kitchen. The house carried a subtle scent of cedar and fresh linen. Their housekeeper, Mrs. K, looked up from the dining table while folding towels. "Hey everyone, is everything all right?" Ayana mumbled in response. Malik did not answer. Their father's voice came from down the hall. "Malik?" Malik appeared in the hallway moments later, still wearing his navy polo, barefoot, and holding tablet. "You're back early," he said, giving a shrug. Charles noticed the slump in his son's shoulders immediately and the way he avoided eye contact. He glanced at Ayana. Her expression conveyed more than she likely intended. What occurred? Malik remained silent. Charles placed the tablet down and crossed his arms. "Malik," Ayana exhaled. "A man at the dealership stated we were not permitted inside." Charles furrowed his brow. "Which dealership?" "Madison Auto Gallery, located off University Drive." "What precisely did he say?" Malik massaged the back of his neck. "He indicated we weren't allowed to browse. He mentioned they don't allow individuals under the age of 18 without a parent present and accused us of loitering." Charles remained motionless for a considerable time. His eyes narrowed a little, not in anger, but with concentration. That measured, careful assessment that indicated he was anticipating 2 or 3 moves ahead. "What did you do?" "We left," Malik stated. "We didn't want to create a disturbance." That was impactful. Charles inhaled deeply, moved into the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. He offered it to Malik before speaking again. "You acted correctly. Do you understand?" Malik affirmed once. Then, his father settled onto a counter stool and looked squarely at him. "Please understand this. You are not inferior to anyone. I'm not concerned if you arrive in athletic wear or formal attire. Maintain your composure. And if someone perceives you as a cause for concern, that is their responsibility, not yours." Ayana rested against the fridge, observing. Charles continued, his voice calm and measured. "However, you also need to be aware of this. Quietude does not invariably signify strength. Occasionally, allowing minor offenses to occur enables their repetition, first with one individual and then with another." Malik's throat tightened. "What's the plan?" Charles didn't respond immediately. He surveyed them both, then rose and retrieved his phone. "I'm going to speak with someone," Ayana said, surprised. "With whom?" Charles replied, departing the room. The subsequent hours until tomorrow morning unfolded with an unusual calm. There were no shouts, no hurried phone calls. Charles prepared dinner as always, grilled salmon, asparagus, and rice. They ate together as a family. A change was palpable. It wasn't animosity, it was determination. That night, Malik lay awake, gazing at the ceiling for a considerable time before finally falling asleep. He didn't fully understand what his dad intended with the discussion, but he sensed it would be more impactful than any outburst. Meanwhile, at the dealership, the manager remained unaware that trouble was brewing. Madison Auto Gallery commenced business at 9 a.m. promptly. As early as 8:45, employees began arriving, their keys jingling, coffee cups in hand, and sunglasses still on, the typical Monday routine. Derek Holton, the assistant sales manager, rested against the front desk, sipping his iced Americano and checking his phone. He no longer recognized many of the names of his inbox. Employee turnover was significant. The position offered good compensation for those who could sell, and he was a skilled salesperson. By 9:03, there was one customer in the parking lot. A navy blue Rolls-Royce Phantom shimmered in the Arizona sun. It did not enter a standard parking spot. It did not wait in the rear. It moved smoothly to the front doors and stopped. Initially, no one exited the vehicle. Derek looked at the receptionist, then walked around the desk. "Are you expecting someone?" he inquired. She replied, her gaze fixed on the car. "No." Then, the door opened. A tall man emerged, wearing a dark blazer, sharply tailored slacks, and shoes polished to a mirror shine. He moved deliberately, with composure. Without preamble, he pushed the glass door open and paused at the entrance. "Good morning," he stated, his voice smooth yet resolute. "I'm seeking a manager." Derek hesitated. "I'm the assistant manager. How may I assist you?" The man fixed him with a direct gaze. "You're not the person I require." At that moment, Kyle Linson, the general manager, emerged from the adjacent office. He was tall, red-faced, and perpetually seemed stressed. "Morning," he said quickly. "I'm Kyle. What can I do for you?" The man retrieved a card from his jacket pocket and offered it. Kyle read the name deliberately. Charles Townsend, founder and chairman. TNS Global. He looked up, a flush rising on his face. Wow, sir. I wasn't expecting," he stammered. "I imagine you weren't either," Charles replied, stepping further inside. "I won't take much of your time." Kyle indicated his office, his eyes briefly darting towards Derek. We could talk in here." But Charles remained still. "No need for privacy. This is a public place. I'll speak briefly." Kyle nodded, appearing uncomfortable. "Naturally. Please proceed." Charles surveyed the showroom. "Yesterday, 2 children entered. One was my son, the other my daughter." Kyle blinked. His throat moved. "I understand. They were informed they couldn't browse, that they should depart, that this establishment wasn't suitable for them." "Sir, we have—" Charles raised a hand. "I'm not here to debate. I'm not seeking a reimbursement. I experienced no loss yesterday. But you did. You missed an opportunity to act justly towards 2 young people, individuals raised to show respect for others, regardless of how they are treated in return." Several other employees had begun to move nearer, feigning to organize documents or wipe down surfaces. Charles continued, "My children are not disruptive. They are thoughtful, intelligent, raised with care, and they don't require your approval. However, they deserve to be regarded as people, not as dangers." Derek looked down at his shoes. The receptionist had ceased typing. Kyle cleared his throat. "Mr. Townsend, if I may, I'm not requesting an apology," Charles stated. "Apologies are simple. The crucial aspect is what one believes when no one is observing. The choices one makes when they presume no one will question them." He paused, allowing the silence to linger. "Because next time it won't be my children. It could be someone who lacks a father with connections to the media. They will leave this place with a memory that will likely remain unspoken, yet it will stay with them for the remainder of their lives." Then he turned to depart. But just before opening the door, he added, without looking back, "You can sell luxury without being small. I hope you understand how." Outside, a small gathering had formed. 2 individuals were recording on their phones, one local reporter acting on a tip, and a woman holding a microphone. Charles had not alerted them. The news had simply spread. A change permeated the air, not in temperature, but in feeling. Charles descended onto the dealership pavement with calm, measured steps. His expression remained steady despite the small group gathering. 2 college students from a local school stood apart, their phones out, quietly speaking to one another. A reporter from KXME5 News was already in the process of speaking, murmuring in her microphone, uncertain if she was broadcasting live. Charles did not raise his voice. He did not seek out a podium. He paused close to the entrance, straightened his jacket, and began to speak. "I hadn't intended to offer any words today. However, I understand the nature of things. If I remain silent now, another will attempt to voice my thoughts." He raised his gaze, observing the limited faces present. "My son, Malik, and my daughter, Ayana, arrived here yesterday afternoon. They were quiet. They didn't disturb anything. They came here to observe. Like any other young person with a flicker of anticipation and a hope in their heart, his voice remained steady. It wasn't booming, it was gentle, So gentle, it compelled people to draw closer. Yet they were asked to depart, not for violating a regulation, not for handling something inappropriately, but because someone determined they didn't fit, that they presented an issue before they uttered a single word. The college student clutching the phone released a quiet, trembling sigh. Charles continued, "I've worked my whole life to build something that would last. And I've taught my children that what you build doesn't just sit in your bank account. It lives in how you treat people, in the everyday decisions, the ones you make when nobody's watching." He paused again, not for drama, but because the next words meant something. "Yesterday, someone looked at my children and didn't see who they were. They saw who they assumed they were, and they dismissed them. It's possible to be disrespectful without raising your voice. Sometimes it's about making someone feel diminished in a place they were eager to enter." Behind the glass doors, Kyle stood watching, hands shoved deep in his pockets. Charles glanced over his shoulder briefly, then returned his attention to the people ahead of him. "I'm not suggesting anyone should boycott this establishment. I don't endorse that approach. I'm no longer even feeling anger. I am simply weary of observing this recurring behavior. It's deeply troubling to see young people treated as if they've committed crimes before any wrongdoing has occurred. Such experiences leave a lasting impact. Silence allows these situations to persist." Several more people paused on the sidewalk. A delivery person across the street adjusted their sunglasses to observe more closely. "I came today because my children should not have been subjected to that kind of treatment, and because I want them to understand that when something is wrong, it shouldn't be ignored. You confront it with clarity, with dignity, and without allowing it to change who you are." He retreated towards a Rolls-Royce, his hand resting on the door handle. "One more point. My kids left yesterday, holding their heads high. That speaks volumes about their character and reveals nothing about the person who attempted to diminish them." He entered the car and remained silent. The onlookers did not offer applause. There was no clapping. A stunned silence filled the space as everyone absorbed the information, the visuals, and the implications. Inside the dealership, Derek lowered himself into a chair. The receptionist's eyes were brimming with tears, and she couldn't explain why. Kyle Ensign stayed near the window, his arms held rigidly at his sides. Yet, he understood that it was no longer possible to manage the narrative. By that afternoon, the first video appeared on Twitter, followed by Instagram, and then the news. The story began to develop independently. By lunchtime, the story had moved beyond local coverage. A shaky vertical phone video, initially recorded by college freshman Tori Clements, had already garnered over 2 million views on X. The accompanying caption stated, "This man just entered a dealership that disrespected his kids and addressed the situation with remarkable composure. I'm truly speechless." Viewers weren't simply sharing the video. They were analyzing it, pausing specific moments, magnifying details, and engaging in discussions and debates within comment threads. A woman from Flagstaff shared a story, noting that Charles Townsend repaired her father's laptop in 2001 and refused payment. She described him as having always been exceptional. However, other reactions were less charitable. One anonymous user, whose profile picture featured an eagle, questioned why the children hadn't disclosed their father's identity, suggesting a desire to portray themselves as victims, which led to the situation escalating. The story subsequently appeared on morning talk shows. During a segment titled, "Billionaire Father Calls Out Discrimination at Tempe Car Dealership," Good Morning Phoenix reported that the dealership's Yelp rating plummeted from 4.2 to 2.1 within hours. Numerous one-star reviews appeared quickly. Customers cited concerns like rude and dismissive staff, feeling that a teenage son was treated like a criminal and vows to never return. Some reviewers claimed that unless one is wearing a suit and tie, they would be asked to leave before speaking. Naturally, the negative response wasn't solely from unfamiliar reviewers. Community organizations also started focusing attention on the situation, advocating for discussions regarding young people, societal views, and implicit prejudice. Amidst this, the dealership issued a response. This was a brief, 2-paragraph apology published on their website and Instagram page, stating, We regret the recent experience that took place at our showroom and are actively reviewing our policies. We strive to provide a welcoming environment to all guests and take these matters seriously. The reactions online spoke volumes. The regret appears to stem from exposure rather than genuine remorse. Instead of policy review, perhaps employee evaluation is needed. This apology lacks sincerity, resembling a fine instead of an expression of concern. Privately, Collinson was working to manage the situation. He had already contacted 2 PR consultants, both of whom advised him to minimize communication, avoid public attention, and refrain from attempts at damage control. However, online sentiment disregarded PR strategies. The public demanded openness, accountability, and concrete steps. While Malik and Ayanna remained at home, their phones buzzed incessantly with messages, some from friends and others from unknown numbers. Ayanna showed her brother a message that elicited laughter, even amidst the circumstances. "Girl, is that your dad on the news? Tell him to run for office or something. I'm dead." However, more difficult messages soon followed. "Why didn't y'all just walk away?" One read, "Ain't nobody owes you a car." Another stated, "Not everything is about race." A final message simply asked, "He probably thought you were skipping school. So what? Rich people want sympathy now?" Malik glanced at his screen, his jaw clenched. Ayanna touched his shoulder. "Don't read that," he mumbled, not looking up. He continued scrolling. Their father entered the room, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "Put the phone down," Charles said. "Just for now." Malik paused, then placed his phone face down on the table. Ayanna did the same. Charles sat opposite them, leaning forward a little. Ayanna frowned. "You two didn't ask for this, but sometimes life decides your story's bigger than just you." "But we didn't even do anything," she added. "We just walked in." "I know," he replied. "That's what makes this so real. You did everything right. And still, someone saw you wrong." Malik stared at the tabletop. "Is it always going to be like that?" Charles paused, letting the question linger. "No," he said, "but you'll face it again. And when you do, you decide who you want to be in that moment." Reporters continued to gather outside. Inside, a feeling deeper than anger began to develop: awareness. And awareness is a persistent force. As the sun descended behind Camelback Mountain, it stretched shadows across the towns and backyard. It had been 2 days since Charles spoke at the dealership, 2 extended, peaceful days filled with news coverage, messages, and public commentary. Yet, shielded by the hedges, a sense of calm prevailed. Charles stood by the grill, methodically flipping salmon fillets. Malik was seated at the patio table, his elbows on his knees, gazing out across the lawn. Ayanna was leaning against the railing, her face hidden within her hoodie. There were no cameras, no inquiries, just family. "You know," Charles began, "without looking up, when I was 16, I saved for 2 years to purchase my first car, a 1994 Corolla. It was faded red and had manual windows." Ayanna looked at him. "You mentioned it didn't have AC, correct?" Charles chuckled. "None at all. A Phoenix summer nearly cooked me. But I cherished that car. I received that treatment not because of kindness, but because I deserved it." Malik finally glanced in my direction. "Have you ever experienced something like that? Like we did?" Charles acknowledged with a single nod. "More times than I can recall. Being followed when entering stores. Being ridiculed when applying for bank loans. I was once refused service at a diner in Tucson. I was there with my code books in my lap, and I simply departed without a confrontation. But why didn't I respond?" Malik inquired, mirroring my current reaction. Charles then turned another fillet. "I didn't believe my voice held weight previously. I felt that remaining unnoticed was the sole path to progress." He paused, but I was mistaken. The grill emitted a quiet hiss. "The truth is, son, enduring enough disrespect can lead you to forget what it feels like to be acknowledged. And I never desired that for you, nor for your sister." Ayanna took a seat next to her brother. "You certainly ensured we were noticed." Charles now addressed them both. "Being noticed isn't sufficient. One must be prepared for the consequences. The acclaim, the disapproval, the individuals who will support you for taking a stand, and those who will oppose it." Malik glanced at his hands. "I never intended for it to become an issue. I simply wished to observe a car." "I understand," Charles stated. That's what makes it significant. You weren't seeking attention. You were simply living your life. And someone objected to the appearance of that. They paused briefly. I am proud of you, Charles added. Both of you. Ayanna shrugged. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't attempt to demonstrate anything. You simply remained genuine, she said. It didn't seem courageous. It shouldn't, he responded. Courage is often understated. It's about not compromising your integrity in a world that occasionally lacks it. A quiet stillness enveloped the yard. Then Ayanna smiled. So, are we still searching for a car or what? Charles grinned. I anticipated you would inquire. Malik straightened up. Are you serious? Charles threw a set of keys onto the table. They fell near Malik's hand with a quiet clink. Check the garage tomorrow, he said. But it's not about the car. It's about who you become while driving it. That matters more than anything with an engine. Ayanna leaned into her brother, teasing. You better not crash it on the first day. Please, Malik shot back. I'm driving like it's made of glass. Charles laughed, and for the first time in days, the weight of the moment began to ease. Some stories conclude with anger, others with quietness. But this one concludes with a lesson. Sometimes the most effective way to respond is to remain upright, peaceful, truthful, and acknowledged. If this story evoked a feeling in you, share it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that challenge, connect, and remind us who we truly are. After a black woman CEO experienced denial of service at her bank, she maintained composure. Within 5 minutes, the manager responsible for the incident was terminated. The errand was intended to be brief, approximately 10 to 15 minutes, a task easily managed between scheduled meetings. That morning, Nadira Langston, aged 48, the head of a multi-million-dollar tech firm located in Phoenix, Arizona, exited her driver's black Lincoln and entered Sycamore First Bank, carrying her company's banking portfolio carefully. She was unhurried. There was no need for haste. Her schedule had been completely free to allow her to complete the transfer of a substantial business account, which was one of several her company had been relocating for months. The account manager she typically collaborated with had retired, and today she was meeting the new team in person to finalize the documents. A simple, standard procedure. Her navy blue suit was expertly tailored. Her hair was styled in a neat, low bun, and she wore diamond studs in her ears. Understated, yet refined. Her heels made no clicking sound as she moved. They barely rustled. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had held a position of authority for a significant period and no longer felt the need to demonstrate it. Approaching the reception desk, she provided her name, Nadira Langston. She explained she was there to meet with someone from the commercial accounts department. The young woman at the counter glanced up, briefly nodding while entering information into the system. Okay, just a moment. It was then that things began. A woman, appearing to be in her mid-50s, with pale blonde hair and a rigid posture, emerged from a nearby glass office and walked over, offering a smile that seemed strained. Can I help you with something? She inquired. Her voice was concise. Nadira turned and offered her hand. Yes, thank you. I'm Nadira Langston. I understand I'm scheduled to meet with someone from the business team. I'm completing a transfer. The woman didn't return the handshake. She looked at the folder Nadira held. And you are? Representing which company? I'm the CEO of Bluestone Dynamics. The account was previously managed by Peter Larson before his retirement. The manager raised an eyebrow, her skepticism evident. And you're here, unaccompanied? Yes, Nadira responded calmly. It's a private matter. A pause followed. One of those pauses that conveys more than a complete sentence. The kind where judgment is disguised as confusion. Right? The woman said, adjusting her position. We generally don't permit walk-ins for high-tier accounts unless it has been arranged beforehand. Nadira stated, still calm. She retrieved the confirmation email. Here's the appointment confirmation from your internal scheduler. Today, 9:30 a.m. The woman looked at the document, then back at Nadira. Are you certain this wasn't intended for another employee at your organization? Nadira blinked deliberately and slowly. I operate the company. A brief silence followed. My name is Cheryl Bainbridge. I'm the branch manager. We're dealing with some concerning events lately. Individuals have been falsely presenting their credentials to gain access to valuable accounts. You appreciate the seriousness of this, I'm sure. Nadira fully grasped the situation. Cheryl, is it? She replied, her tone remaining calm and measured. Offering my license, corporate ID, and the transaction papers I'm here to approve? Cheryl's smile became strained. It's simply procedure, Ms. Langston. Please don't view it as directed at you. Nadira had encountered that phrase on countless occasions, in numerous boardrooms, airport lounges, and hotel lobbies. However, before she could add anything, Cheryl motioned to the receptionist. Could you please contact security? Just to err on the side of caution. It was necessary to confirm her statements. Nadira's mouth remained still. Her tone remained consistent. Are you summoning security? She asked. On the CEO of one of our most important prospective clients? Cheryl's shoulders became even more rigid. I didn't suggest that, I replied. I simply stated we needed to verify. At that moment, a subtle change occurred within the room. A quiet hum arose from a man seated in the waiting area. A brief look passed between two tellers positioned behind the counter. A palpable shift occurred. It was evident Nadira had followed every procedure correctly, yet she was still being made to feel like an outsider. Nadira, however, was not prepared to accept the situation. Not this time. The bank lobby wasn't crowded, but sufficient people were present to observe the unfolding events. An older man, waiting in line, moved uncomfortably. A woman seated close to the loan office took out her phone, feigning a check of her email, but her gaze remained fixed on Nadira and Cheryl. The security guard was not yet present, but Cheryl remained steadfast, as if anticipating immediate reinforcement. Nadira carefully opened her folder. It contained all necessary documentation to confirm her identity: business cards, certified articles of incorporation, 2 forms of identification, and the bank's own records confirming the account transfer. She arranged them on the reception desk methodically, similar to a card dealer. Composed. Accurate. Here, she stated, that is my Arizona state ID. This document confirms my company's EIN. It includes the board resolution authorizing me as the account signer. In this, she indicated the final sheet, is your bank's welcome letter. Cheryl briefly reviewed the papers. Anyone can print documents, she stated, crossing her arms. I've worked in banking for 27 years. I've seen people pretend to be CFOs, consultants, even heirs to estates. We don't make exceptions just because someone claims they're important. Nadira's tone remained steady, but her eyes narrowed. So this isn't about the paperwork. It's about how I appear, correct? Cheryl let out a dismissive sound. I beg your pardon. You heard me. If I presented myself as a 55-year-old man in a Brooks Brothers suit, you'd be extending a handshake and offering coffee. Ma'am, please reduce your voice volume. Nadira responded. My voice is already subdued, her words sharp and clear. I am the CEO. You have reviewed the documents. You know my name. The only thing that seemed to register was that I wasn't what they anticipated. A silence followed. A protracted, uncomfortable silence, and then Cheryl spoke. It wasn't a shout, but it carried. You just don't look like a CEO? The statement lingered, heavy as smoke after a match. Someone inhaled sharply. Another person murmured, did she really just say that? The receptionist stood motionless behind the desk. She appeared to wish she could simply vanish. Nadira's eyelids lowered deliberately, yet her voice remained steady. I have secured more than $80 million in venture capital. I have spearheaded 3 product launches. I have presented as a keynote speaker at CES and finalized agreements in 6 countries. I don't need to appear any particular way to be completely myself. Cheryl began to respond. However, before she could, Nadira shifted slightly and asked the receptionist, is there a regional director assigned to this branch? The young woman nodded hesitantly. He is present today, in fact. It's a surprise audit. He's in the back conference room. Nadira's lips formed a slight smile. Excellent. I wish to speak with him. Then, Cheryl intervened once more, visibly agitated. There's no necessity for that. I am capable of managing this. Let's avoid making the situation worse. Nadira faced her directly. You have already worsened this. You summoned security. You rejected every form of identification I presented. You challenged my position, my firm, and my credibility, all without initiating a single phone call to confirm any detail. Therefore, no, you're not capable of handling this. The room fell silent. The receptionist lifted the phone and initiated a call to an internal extension. "Mr. Dorsey?" she inquired. "There is someone present requesting to speak with you. Her name is Nadira Langston from Bluestone Dynamics." A brief hesitation. "Yes. All right. I will inform him." She ended the call and turned to Nadira, her eyes displaying surprise. "He is on his way out now." Meanwhile, Cheryl remained unaware of the significant misjudgment she had made. The door situated at the rear of the bank swung open, and a tall man, dressed in a charcoal suit, emerged. He moved with a brisk, purposeful stride, alert but not hurried. He held a slim leather tablet and wore an expression suggesting displeasure at being interrupted from meetings. However, his expression softened immediately when he saw Nadira. "Nadira Langston," he said, extending his hand. She shook it firmly. "Yes, you must be Mr. Dorsey." He continued, "Matthew Dorsey, Regional Director. I've heard a lot about you." Peter spoke very highly before he retired. "We appreciate the opportunity to manage your accounts." Cheryl's mouth parted slightly, and her face paled. Matthew turned to her, appearing puzzled. Did something go wrong with the meeting? Cheryl struggled to find the right words. "Yes, there was. I simply verified the credentials before providing access to the commercial suite. This follows our standard procedure." Nadira remained silent. She didn't need to. The receptionist, still positioned behind the counter, added cautiously. "She contacted security, sir. She stated that we were unable to verify the client's identity." Matthew blinked. "You contacted security? Regarding Ms. Langston?" "I was attempting to adhere to established procedures," Cheryl responded promptly. "We've experienced individuals recently presenting fabricated business credentials. I prefer not to assume any risks. You understand how crucial our commercial accounts are." He gave her a direct look. "Yes, I am aware. This is why we verify credentials, rather than form assessments of clients based on subjective impressions." Cheryl's shoulders tightened. "Excuse me?" she began. "I've reviewed the compliance logs." You didn't even access the file she presented. You disregarded the scheduled appointment. You dismissed the identification. "I was safeguarding the bank," she asserted. "You embarrassed the bank," Matthew retorted. "You've publicly humiliated one of the most significant clients we've on board this year. In view of customers. In view of staff. With no justification." A security guard finally arrived at the front entrance, his radio clipped to his belt, meticulously scanning the room, as if anticipating trouble. Matthew dismissed him with a wave. "Everything's fine here, Eric," Cheryl repeated, her voice now trembling. False alarm. She had entered alone. Her name wasn't on the standard schedule. It was on the revised internal schedule, the one your assistant oversees. The same schedule you approve every Monday morning. "You simply didn't review it," Nadira stated, stepping forward slightly, her voice low but clear. "You hadn't acted without delay because of an absence. You paused because I didn't align with your preconceived notion of who should possess such authority." Matthew remained silent, allowing the quiet to linger. There was nothing further to elaborate on. Cheryl's mouth opened once more, but she spoke no words. "Ms. Langston," Matthew stated, pivoting with a return to decorum. "Would you be willing to accompany me? I will personally oversee your transaction from my office." Nadira acknowledged with a single nod. "Certainly." They started to leave, passing the lines of desks and glass-walled offices. Cheryl stayed still by the front desk, her eyes wide, her face unreadable. No one moved towards her. The receptionist looked at her keyboard. The security guard walked away slowly, seeming unsure of what to do. Just as they were about to vanish down the hallway, Matthew halted and turned. Cheryl looked up, clearly surprised. "My office. After this meeting, we'll be discussing your role here in detail." He didn't raise his voice. Wasn't necessary. However, Cheryl already sensed a change in the atmosphere. Matthew's office presented a crisp, though understated, impression. It featured clean lines, two chairs positioned across from his desk, and a tall window allowing morning light to spread across the carpet. Nadira waited until he invited her to sit, and even then, she maintained a straight posture and a composed demeanor. He closed the door softly, then turned back to face her. "Ms. Langston, I want to apologize for what just happened. That should not have occurred. Not here. Not anywhere. You were treated unfairly," Nadira stated calmly, placing her folder on the desk. "However, this isn't the first time. It probably won't be the last," Matthew responded, leaning against the edge of his desk. "We have protocol for a reason, to prevent exactly this kind of thing from happening." Cheryl disregarded every step. "She didn't just disregard protocol," Nadira said. "She formed an opinion of me immediately upon seeing my face." Matthew breathed out his nose, crossing his arms. "I acknowledge that." He resumed, looking at the documents she had placed before him, reviewing them without speaking. He wasn't hurried. He was carefully considering everything. "Everything is in the correct order," he stated. "I never questioned it. However, I do want to inquire. Did she allow you any opportunity to provide an explanation before summoning security?" "Not really," Nadira responded. "She recognized my name, saw my face, and heard my title, yet still inquired if the appointment belonged to another person." Matthew rubbed his jaw. "That will present a challenge for her. A significant one." Nadira inclined her head. "I didn't intend for anyone to lose their job. I am aware of that. However, sometimes repercussions are deserved." Immediately, his office phone vibrated. He answered, listened briefly, then instructed, "Send her in." A knock followed shortly, and Cheryl entered. The usual assuredness had vanished. Her face was pale, her shoulders slightly hunched. She walked as if unsure how to position her hands or where to look. "Ms. Langston," she began, her voice quiet. "I owe you an apology. I was mistaken. That wasn't my goal." "You don't have to pretend," Nadira stated, interrupting. Her voice wasn't harsh, only resolute. "You acted precisely as you did. You didn't believe I was who I claimed to be, and instead of verifying, you chose to embarrass me." Cheryl looked to Matthew, visibly wanting him to intervene. He remained silent. "I've spent over 2 decades in this field," she continued. "I've witnessed fraud, identity theft, all sorts of deception. And none of that pertains to me," Nadira stated. "You didn't err due to caution. You err because you believed you could evade detection," Matthew finally said. "Cheryl, following a review of events this morning, encompassing internal audit records and client appointment logs, I have decided to end your employment, effective immediately." Cheryl blinked. "And? Are you serious?" "Yes, I am," Matthew replied. "You breached client protocol, showed disrespect to one of our most valuable account holders, and created a public disturbance that jeopardized the bank's reputation. This wasn't an isolated mistake. It was a pattern, and it concludes here." She appeared ready to retaliate, but the atmosphere offered no space for her to exert herself. She faced Nadira. "I didn't intend to cause you any personal offense," she said. "You didn't offend me," Nadira replied softly. "You showed disrespect. There's a distinction." Cheryl lowered her gaze, then pivoted, exited the doorway, and left it slightly open. Matthew remained still for a moment. Subsequently, he settled into his desk chair and raised his head. "I trust that achieves a degree of responsibility." "This is a beginning," Nadira responded. However, beyond the confines of that office, the narrative was quickly moving away from the bank. Information doesn't spread rapidly within a bank, except when a significant event occurs. And what unfolded that morning at Sycamore was not merely significant, it was irrefutable. As Nadira and Matthew left the office, the ambience in the lobby had fundamentally changed. Patrons remained silent. Tellers murmured behind their workstations. Cheryl's absence was more pronounced than her presence had ever been. The nameplate had already been taken from the front glass office, as if she had never worked there. Matthew walked Nadira out personally. "I'll ensure the rest of the paperwork is managed by someone capable," he said. "You shouldn't have to experience this level of absurdity. Ever." Nadira nodded. Accepting the folder, he returned to her. "The paperwork is the straightforward part," she replied. He gave a quiet, respectful laugh. Indeed, they arrived at the front doors, where two customers graciously held them open. A teller rose from behind the counter and offered a small wave, hesitant yet genuine. The sun was ascending higher above Phoenix. The air was dry, and the pavement was warm. Nadira hesitated close to the curb, her driver advancing, the car door already ajar. She glanced back at Matthew. "A statement you made in your office resonated with me, that occasionally consequences are deserved." He affirmed this with a nod. "Yes, I agree," she stated. "But repercussions lacking comprehension do little to affect change." Matthew lifted his eyebrows, showing interest. "I don't want Cheryl to experience hardship," Nadira proceeded. "I need people to understand this wasn't about me. This occurs for Black professionals, particularly women, on a daily basis. It happens at airports, restaurants, stores, and meetings. Infrequently, no one faces termination. They're simply disregarded." Again and again, he remained silent. He allowed her to continue. Perhaps for the first time, someone like him genuinely listened. "If the bank is to address this with seriousness," she stated, "refrain from simply publishing a statement online. Avoid issuing a standard apology. Initiate a dialogue. Instruct your managers regarding the oversights made. Prevent this from recurring for the next woman who enters that establishment." Matthew inhaled deeply, his posture now slightly more burdened. "You are correct. I am unable to reverse the events that transpired. However, I can ensure they contribute to a positive outcome. That's the true measure, isn't it?" Nadira responded. "Not what one accomplishes with an audience, but what one alters when unobserved." She entered the vehicle, and the door closed behind her. The interior was quiet, but the silence felt clean. Her driver glanced back through the mirror. "Everything satisfactory, Ms. Langston?" She looked at her hands, then out the window at the glass facade of the bank. Cheryl had resolved to ignore her. The crucial decision, the one that would have significant impact, had already been made by someone else. "Yes, it has," she said softly. Nadira didn't know that within 24 hours the entire country would be discussing what transpired inside that branch. It began with a tweet, just a few lines from someone who had been sitting near the loan officer's desk that morning. "Just witnessed a Black woman CEO get denied service at her own bank." She remained composed, publicly addressed the bias, and the manager was terminated immediately. "I don't know her name, but I won't forget her demeanor." By lunchtime, the tweet had surpassed 40,000 likes. By evening, it appeared on Instagram, then Facebook, and subsequently on local news. A local blogger identified Nadira's name by comparing information with a press release Bluestone Dynamics released earlier that month. A Phoenix reporter verified the information with the bank. By nightfall, Nadira Langston was trending across the nation. She made no public statements. It wasn't necessary. Others shared their experiences. LinkedIn was filled with accolades. Corporate professionals, frequently Black women, recounted similar situations, being questioned at the valet of their own office buildings, asked to show ID 3 times before boarding first-class flights, being addressed as sweetie, even while leading negotiations worth millions. People described Nadira as graceful, resilient, and composed. However, those who understood the situation better explained that it was more than grace. It was a matter of survival. Simultaneously, Sycamore First corporate headquarters mobilized. Within 24 hours, they issued a statement recognizing the incident, confirming Cheryl Bainbridge's departure from employment, and affirming the company's dedication to equity and continued training. This response proved insufficient for the public. Numerous comments appeared, questioning how many other Cheryls remain working in your branches. And do your executives grasp that implicit bias training cannot address issues permitted by your hiring processes? Black women should not be expected to remain composed when facing disrespect. Nadira made no public statements regarding the situation until 3 days later when she consented to an interview on a podcast hosted by a longtime friend and business strategist, Leona Bates. They faced each other in a silent studio in Tempe, with microphones activated and without any prepared notes. Leona began softly, asking, "You've remained silent while the internet has erupted. What prompted this response now?" Nadira answered, "Because the matter is no longer about me. Leona focused on what this situation highlighted. Specifically, that despite possessing the correct titles, documents, and credentials, people still perceive you as an outsider. Speaking out is then labeled as causing a disturbance, while remaining quiet is interpreted as agreement. It's a draining predicament, regardless of the choice. They discussed the matter for almost an hour, extending beyond the bank to address the significant emotional burden of maneuvering within established hierarchies while burdened by long-standing prejudices. Nadira remained composed. She didn't express sadness or frustration. Instead, she simply stated the facts, clearly, steadily, and without question. Following the broadcast, a fresh surge of interest emerged. This interest was authentic, thoughtful, and not superficial. Fellow CEOs contacted her. Business publications featured the narrative. A headline declared, "She didn't raise her voice. She raised the bar." Nevertheless, Nadira maintained a grounded perspective. She did not desire recognition. She sought transformation. And she understood that meaningful change rarely appears in news headlines. The bias appeared in hiring practices, policy decisions, and even in determining who was initially believed. Even after the initial news coverage faded and the events became part of collective memory, those who witnessed her that morning at the bank still remembered what they saw. A few weeks later, Nadira addressed a room full of college students at Arizona State University. She had not intended to give any public speeches that season, as her schedule was already very full. When a business ethics professor contacted her and requested a conversation with her class, she readily agreed. The event was understated. There were no stage lights or press coverage, just 40 students, some taking notes in notebooks, others using laptops, eager to hear from the woman whose experience transformed a regular bank visit into a nationwide conversation. She presented no slides. There was no podium. She simply walked to the room's front, paused, and began speaking. "I won't be telling a storybook narrative," she stated. "I won't be suggesting that if you labor diligently, no one will challenge you, because that isn't invariably accurate." The room fell silent, all attentive. You can possess the title, the suit, the contracts, the track record, and still be informed that you don't belong, not due to any failings on your part, but because someone else cannot envision your triumph without a face resembling their own. She surveyed the room. Her voice remained gentle, but each word resonated. And in those moments, a choice presents itself. Do you contract to ease their discomfort, or do you maintain your full presence, even if it creates tension in the space? A young man seated in the front row raised his hand. He asked, "How did you manage to remain composed during that experience? Weren't you feeling anger?" Nadira responded with a slow nod. "Naturally, I was. But anger is only valuable if you understand how to channel it. That day, I employed it to remain grounded. I employed that tactic to ensure she couldn't dismiss me without looking me in the eye while doing it." Another hand then rose, this time from a young woman. "What advice would you offer someone just beginning, who hasn't developed a resume like yours?" Nadira hesitated. "Recognize your value before anyone else attempts to define it for you. And if they try to diminish you, speak regardless, even if your voice trembles." There is a certain quality to her delivery, as if she were addressing herself as much as the listener. Following the presentation, students formed a line to express their gratitude. Some simply desired to shake her hand. Others sought guidance. One young woman, speaking softly, shared, "I'm studying engineering. I'm considering dropping out. I didn't believe there was a place for someone with my background." Nadira responded, making direct eye contact, "There is. And if there isn't, create it." That evening, back in her office, Nadira found herself alone at her desk, enjoying a cup of tea. Her inbox remained full. Her phone continued to buzz. The excitement hadn't fully subsided. She understood that the public's attention would fade. However, certain individuals would retain the memory. The students, the customers present in that bank lobby, the employees who witnessed a manager lose her position due to someone's unwillingness to yield. And perhaps, in the future, when a woman like her entered a place where she wasn't anticipated, she might be greeted instead of questioned. She might be respected, all because of one moment, one voice, one refusal to remain silent. If this story resonated with you, even slightly, please share it. Change doesn't always begin with prominent demonstrations or widespread media attention. Occasionally, it originates with a composed, persistent voice that states, "This isn't right."